I would like to start. Well, it's always a question. People always ask us about the name of the screening, and you know the one or two words that we choose to join the films, to put the films together. And perhaps I would like to start with the word transmission, because more than being a word that is somehow present in both films, it also reminded me, watching the films together today, that a double screening is also somewhere where transmission, a certain kind of transmission takes place between one film and the other. Now, the first film transmits something to the other film, and in a way, the second film also transmits something to the first film. In a way, because our experience with movies is not a linear one, but as Eisenstein used to say, it works as an accumulation. No, we don't forget what we have said and heard. We just accumulate with the next image and the next sounds, and then our memory continues to work during the screening. So my first question, perhaps we could start with you, Nina, is for you there is some kind of transmission between the two films, and did you notice something that you could mention around that?
Well, I feel a little unqualified to. I've just seen both these films for the first time right now.
I think your phone is not.
Okay. Yeah, I feel a little unqualified. I've seen both films for the first time just now, so it's just a reaction. But it seems to me that the first film is talking about a memory of revolutionary times, and the second film is sort of both, and I could be completely wrong about this, it's just my impression that the second film is sort of simultaneously nostalgic for those revolutionary times, and also trying to project into the future some sense of meaning through that kind of revolutionary act, which, however, seems at the same time meaningless within the context of our times. And I don't know if that's even close at all. I was quite mystified by a lot of elements of the second film, so I'm not sure I'm the right person to discuss it. I think the director would know more, but my sense is the feeling of wanting to have political meaning in a time where there's such an overwhelming, crushing sense of the power of capital and the sort of the global, the crushing global kind of hierarchy. At least I feel that way. That these characters are somehow lost in that, and that's just my own impression. But I don't know that I understood your film totally. So
well,
that was my.
It's not made to be all understood. But yeah, well, I'm not in the best condition to perceive the first movie because I'm a little bit nervous. It's the first time I saw the movie. But what I can say is that our movie is made like a collage a lot. So in that sense, it was a piece. It could be a piece, another piece in the collage. So it went well to the movie. Before the movie, it was a nice introduction. I was really touched by the voice of Menkes. of course. But yeah, I think our movie is already complicated to add this piece of collage because we had like 6 or 7 hours of different pieces, and we tried to put it together as it was a bit like we had this idea that it was a hopeful monster. It was really like a Frankenstein thing, and how can we put all those pieces together so that it can hold on? It can hold. So, well, adding an extra piece, well, it's too hard for me to to analyze. Yeah. Right now, yeah, but yeah, I liked it. I liked the first movie too.
I would just perhaps add a question for you, Anna, because Renaud mentioned the word collage, and it's very interesting to imagine, because when we say collage, we always think of visual collage because of the history of painting, but the film is also a sound collage and a sonic collage, and perhaps you could comment on that, how to work as with a collage in terms of sound, because that's a very interesting quality of the film as well.
Well, in the same way, I would say that it's a way of also saving something. Putting things simultaneously makes a kind of a way to keep them in our memories, but that is stronger perhaps than in a linear fashion. So me too, I'm in a kind of second altered state because it's the first time I see it in big screen, but yeah, I don't know what exactly to say.
I think if I'm also sometimes a critic, and as an exterior spectator, it would be easier to connect the two films. So it's a bit difficult right now to yeah.
We will try to loosen up a bit during the debate, and you guys will be more comfortable. Perhaps we could pass to a different question. There's something about, well, your work, Renaud and Anna, and about Nina's work as well, because Nina, you also, there's something about their film that it seems a film that is crafted, you know, and did with your hands in some way. You know, you manufactured film in a way. You have the feeling that this film is made by people that are put hard work on it with their hands in some time. Their heads, their ears, but also their hands in some way. And Nina, you used to do a lot of parts of the work of a film, right? You did camera, you did editing, and I was remembering during the screening, I was reading that about your work, and I was remembering when Maya Deren wrote that an artist should take care of the most part of the making, the production of a film, in order to be autonomous, in order to be independent. And I had this feeling about your film, guys, that I don't know, maybe you could comment on that, Nina, of this choice of taking care of a huge part of the production of the film yourself, and maybe you guys too, because you're actors, you're writers, you're sound people. Anna, you do the sound. I know you do the image. I love the way you guys sign at the end. Images, Renaud, and sound. Anna, it's like so simple and so beautiful in a way. And perhaps you could comment a little bit on that process of crafting the movie, and you, Nina, as well.
I don't want to talk too much about my own work. We're here for your work, but I always, those people who might know my films, they always came from sort of a very deep internal space inside me, and it was not something that I was able really to share. And I didn't want to share. It was a very singular thing that I was doing, and I would always complete my films without any screenings for other people to get comments, you know. And it might be interesting for people to know I'm showing a film here in the Berlinale Panorama called Brainwashed, Sex, Camera, Power, which is a film that I did not make that way. It's a film made for a wider audience, and I had an editor, and I showed it to people, and I got comments, and it was a very, very different process. So I can say that from my perspective, an interior private process is very exceptional and very rewarding and very private. And this, the other kind of filmmaking, which is really how most films are made, where you know, you have a team and you share cuts and you get comments and you revise according to sometimes what other people say, and you have collaborators. It's a very different process. I'm not necessarily saying one is better, but it's extremely different process. So it seems like in your film, I don't know your process, but it seems like you had a small team that collaborated very, very closely. So it was definitely not, you weren't worrying so much about a collective response. You were trying to articulate something that you felt together, so the two people sort of acted in a private way. And that's my impression.
Well, you're totally right. In fact, there was most of the time no crew at all. Most of the, well, maybe half of the movie. The camera is on a tripod. The micro is on a tripod, and we are me and Anna in front of the camera with nobody, and Geneviève sometimes. But could I call that my own process? I don't know. This movie was made out of despair because I haven't shot during the last 5 years. I've been trying to finance some movie without success, and we decided to make it anyway, without any money, without any money to have any film crew. So that was that we, and I didn't have any desire to play as an actor. That was really a sort of sacrifice I had to make to continue filming in a way. Well, you could always go outside and film. I'm not too much in the direct documentary style, as I cannot pay the people to work. Well, we have to work, and of course Geneviève was there. We were the three together, talking about the things we want to do, and let's stop talking and do it. But for the, so that was, yeah, handmade, but finally a lot of the shooting, there was no end to hold anything. So, but once we shot the more narrative aspect of the film, for the dreams and other stuff, we went a lot with the micro camera in our hands, more like in a, I guess, experimental filmmaker who just go along with the camera and try to capture stuff. So that was more the ending part. Yeah, but what 2 or 4 ends? We were missing 2 or 4 ends for the shooting. Yeah.
I would add that we looked for collaborators at the beginning, but since we didn't have any, as he said, we found collaborators in the past. So with Ghosts and with like coming back to your question before, it's the communicating with old music, old films, old connecting. Like it's more of the hand making process is a diachronic one more than a synchronic one. It's a link to the past to make how do you say, to make resonate these links, because the capital form is one that wants to erase all of these roots and links and hidden links. So I would say that most of the way we gave ourselves time to make the movie, and in the way of making it, taking the time to explore these links, and after listening over and over again and commenting between us, that was a way of that was the hand making part, craft part. There's Deligny that talks about two kinds of memories, and we hear his voice at one point in the movie, and he talks about the species memory, the humankind species memory, and the education memory, or the institutional memory, and they're kind of in conflict. And we tried, I think, to connect with more our archetypal kind of memory in the way we made it. Yeah, I would say it's another kind of collaboration, and but it was hard. And now we would like to kind of make a kind of jump to be more close to synchronous collaboration.
I love this way of describing it as a collaboration with the dead people and with these ghosts from the past. I love the way you described it. And yeah, just so you know, we are taking questions from the audience, so maybe if someone has one already, we can take. Oh, there's a lot of questions.
I have a question.
Yes, we're just waiting for the microphone.
Merci pour le film. I have a question about the references that you were saying about the past. Would you say that the Godard films from around 68 and also the Debois film, that there were influences? Because what one could see, I think, was something that you are referencing to these films that are kind of honestly believing in this revolutionary spirit, but nowadays it's probably not possible anymore. And I've found it interesting that you were trying to find a way, also with the way how you were filming, not only with what was said, but also the way you were filming, that it's kind of a disconnected and destroyed hope. Is that true? Because I could see that on one hand in the images, but on the musical side, I would kind of criticize the film, because I thought it was very, the repertoire of music that you choose, it was almost like best of late 19th century and early 20th century French music, orchestral music. And I thought the choice was kind of bland. So, so on the image side and on the idea side, references to these Godard and Debois, and on the musical side, it didn't kind of make sense. Or was that deliberate?
Sorry, I missed the last part. Well, in a way, we had this idea that was more the character of Raoul, who was carrying the bar Godard 60s, 70s thing, and that our character were more the turning of the 20th century. They were more in a romantic or expressionist world, so that's why we try to choose the music from this period, and the Rilke, Baudelaire, and they were more living in that area in their mind, and their dreams are more carried by this period. Yeah. and it's more. But of course, they converge at one point.
And also, well, Beatrice's character had Messiaen. That's more after the Second World War. So she connects the different time periods together. There was Chelsea also. That Beatrice, it's kind of coherent.
Subliminal.
Yes. But we didn't have a intention, purpose. It was more feeling that with the impressionist music was seemed to us that it was the right one for the main images of the clouds and the different landscapes of the film. Is maybe someone else think something about that?
We have more questions.
Yeah, would you like to talk a little bit about the aesthetic of the film, the way you find this kind of image? I don't know, so sometimes it looks like some video, again like what Godard did, but maybe in like Puissance de la Parole, what was doing with the video for the telecoms. It's very beautiful, looks like video. Well, how did you come to this kind of aesthetic choice?
Yeah, but first, it's always the constraint. So that's the only camera I had at this moment.
Which one?
It's well, Panasonic the P2 cards.
The DV camera?
No, well, that's among the first professional HD camera. It's a Panasonic from 2005, I think. So it's not analog. It's with the card, big card, but the sensor of the camera is the CCD sensor.
Okay.
So that's the sensor of the analog camera. So that's why there's an analog feeling, and there's more noise, and yeah, the noise is, well, it's more organic, but it's harder. You need more light than with the actual camera. So, well, I like this camera because of this sensor, but you need more light, and when you are doing the light, the camera, the acting, it's a little heavy. But yeah, that was one of our goal, was to really fight against the propreté, the cleanness of the actual camera. So I think if I had to choose, I would have choose the same camera for this movie, even though that's the only one I had. And yeah, we cranked the gain to have more noise. We had this idea at the beginning to light every night scene with only candles. So we built like big candles, but at the end of the first day of shooting, our face were getting, well, not burned, but there was a soot. How do we say la suie? Well, our face were darker. Yeah. Now it's yeah. And it was really intense to have like 3 big candles around us all the time. So we had some extra light. But this idea to have always something moving in the image to fight the laziness of the numeric camera.
Yeah, perhaps I could amend the question about this, because there's something about the two films that connect in a way, because Los Ingrávidos, the collective responsible for the first film, they have a manifesto from 2012, and they say they defend the use of 16mm cameras nowadays as a way of somehow fighting against this dictatorship of HD images that we live in. And knowing now that you're using somehow an old camera with an analog sensor, I had this feeling when I saw the film for the first time in my computer and television, but right now, watching it in the big screen, the grain is really highlighted by the big screen. And perhaps you could comment something on that, like is using an anachronic technology something that is politically important for you too? I mean, have you thought about that? Is something that you think about? And also, perhaps Nina could talk about that too, because you worked with a lot of different formats throughout your life, like with Super 8 and 16 and HD, and perhaps you guys could talk about what is the meaning of working with certain technology in terms of a political stance against, I mean, towards the images we're living.
You want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I just forget. Yeah, go. Yeah, I'll take back. I know I have something to say, but I just forget. But
Well, I could say that we try to find a space to again use our hands. So I think that because of the digital age, it went very fast. We don't have time to make a space inside of it and to come in dialogue with certain kinds of technologies. So it's more of little by little trying to come in dialogue with the technology and to détourner from the automatic things they do, because that sculpts our perception. And if we let the machine do automatically, we don't put ourselves inside and have a dialogue. So most of it, like he said, was a constraint because we didn't have cameras that were more recent. But in another way, it was also a good, a happy constraint, because we had the time to explore how to détraquer and detourn and make ours technologies.
yeah, and what I can also add is that this camera, I have been using it for about 7 years before shooting. So there's really this appropriation of the technology that with the always new camera every year, you don't have time to see where the camera have a nice default, where you can trick the camera. And with this camera, I know that camera a lot, and so that's one thing, to have a sort of organic hybridation with the technology. It takes time, so that's one way of saying that anachronic. That's crazy, because it's a 2005 camera and we're talking about anachronic, but yeah.
But it sounds anachronic.
Yeah.
We're so used to
Yeah.
these HD images that when we see your film,
Yeah.
it visually you're
Yeah.
impacted by it.
Yes.
By the texture.
Yeah, and also there's just, if you study a little bit perception, you see that the new camera, well, not all, but when that thing moves in the image, if you film a wall with no moving light, the pixels, they just reproduce themselves. They don't recapture every frame. They copy and perceptively, our eyes are lazy, and the grain of the pellicule, of the film, it makes, or it goes against the laziness of our eyes always, because there's no part of the image that is 2 times the same. So that's in this way, that's a form of resistance, because the eyes has to stay awake. And, yeah. So that's why I like the noise. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've shot Super 8, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, and an HD, and now UHD, and For me personally, I really always related to the HD and the UHD cameras the same way I related to the film cameras. It didn't feel so different to me, but one thing I thought was interesting is when we were working on this new film in the lab with the color timers, this is a guy who does, you know, big films, like right before he did my film, he did Licorice Pizza, you know, and he was saying that, you know, what's happened with this, you know, this constant, you know, first you have HD, and then you have 2K, and then you have 4K, and now you have 6K, and now they even have 8K. And for the lab, they consider it to be a nightmare. These high, you know, like even 4K, they don't really like it because usually what they have to do with 4K is they have to downgrade it to make it look realistic. It's too sharp. But it's just a marketing thing that it's always, you know, 4K, and then it's 6K, and then it's 8K, and then the files get so huge they can't deal with it. And so the timer said, like, 2K is great. Like, we should have stopped at 2K. You know, so this obsession with higher and higher levels of, you know, flawless, no grain, but then they have to bring it down because it looks horrible. And, you know, like this timer was telling me, you know, people sit, like the actors come in or whatever, and they sit there and they go, soften it up, you know, because no one can stand this intense sharpness, which is actually painful to look at, and so they force you to buy these newer and newer, you know, higher and higher grades, and then you have to buy time to like bring it down and make it look more human. So it's kind of absurd.
Yeah, totally. And when do we really, how often do we watch a movie in 4K or 6K? Never, most never.
But you have to talk about the different aesthetics, then it would make sense. You know, if you only talk about it, it sounds nostalgic like that. Talk about what the different aesthetics are of these different technologies. Then it becomes interesting. If it's just, yeah, we should stop there.
No, but
that's, you know, it depends on what you want with the technology.
Yeah.
It's not a given. It's not a number. It's not comparing numbers.
That's
it's
true.
About what do you want?
I'm just talking about like the big film studios, like the Licorice Pizza. You know, these people.
Why do you talk about technology? Why don't you talk about what you want with the technology?
I'm just making the point that the technology that we're pushed to buy more expensive cameras, more expensive editing, bigger files. You're pushed to do these things to, you know, be, you know, modern, or I don't know what the word is, you know, and then it becomes something that's, at least in the case of a regular narrative film, not something like this, which is very almost painterly and very specifically creating a different effect, but in quote unquote, you know, normal Hollywood filmmaking, they push these more and more and more expensive forms, and then they just have to bring them back down. I just think it's absurd.
I wanted to say that the 4K also is that the pixel, it looks dead. I mean, because if you repeat the same pixel, we have 4,000 pixels. You have to make it move, or else it looks dead, and it's horrible for perception. I mean, so of course we would have to find other ways of using 4K and with maybe better computers to or organic kind of computers to change it so it looks more human. But like the way it's made, it's not done by people who decide these kind of things, and that are finally, like, a technology is never an obligation, but it becomes like insidieusement an obligation. The other ones don't exist, and it's discontinué, or you have to find the adapter and all kinds of things, and or else the how do you say, the rendu, the time it takes to make the compression. I mean, it's pretty awful. But before, you could work with your hand see the result the day after. I mean, it was more like in a human scale, human time scale, more it made more sense. But now the technology does not permit our mind to install itself in a time scale that's in our scale. So we have to find other ways to work with it. I would say that.
Continuing, but moving it a little bit, this question, I was thinking about how I didn't know that you had an old camera, like old from 2005, but I mean, and that's why somehow you worked with your film. But I come from South America, so we have a whole tradition of thinking and of making films like based on precariousness as a force. You know, in the 60s, among many authors of that time, Glaube Rocha, Mario Handler, Fernando Birri, a lot of filmmakers and theorists, they thought about the value of working with our underdevelopment as a force, as a violent force towards the cinema made in the US or the cinema made in Europe. And I was thinking about, Mario Handler, this Uruguayan filmmaker, he used to, in Uruguay in that time, in the 60s, they didn't have a moviola and editing machine, and he cut his films with a scissor and glued them together in order to edit the films. And also, he didn't have money to buy films, so he hacked his camera to film, his 16mm camera, to film in 12 frames per second, because he could do two films with the same amount of film. But these, when we watch the films today, they look that way, and they produce certain aesthetic, and I agree with the person who said that, certain aesthetic traces because of that underdeveloped precariousness and this kind of poverty that produces something new. And I also think about your film somehow, because there is something that you do with color, for instance, or with the incidence of light, the light compositions in the film, the way you deal with color, perhaps wouldn't be done with a highly, the state-of-the-art camera or something like that. Perhaps you could talk a little about that. Not the same question, but perhaps the compositions, especially color. We didn't talk about color yet, and I think this film has a lot to do with major part of its force is color. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the constraints. That's how we say. Yeah. That's where the intentions. You have to love your destiny. Love your destiny. Well, you have to make the constraint your intention. So that's always and this movie. Well, there's not much that are pure intentions. They are all based on constraints. Yeah, and the other thing. About the color. Have something to say about the color? Well, the color. Well, it's hard to talk about colors. I've passed a lot of time color grading. Yeah, and it's not with the new camera. You can change everything in every color. That was not the case. So, one thing I could say is that the color had to be there in the reality at a certain point. We had to start from there, and
I would just add for more the poverty part that the I think it's a joy of having, like, if we have less things, we have more. If we have more constraints, in a kind of way, you can invent more. There's more place for invention than if you have too much. Then you get lost and you get you bend in a kind of if you but then you think and you have to find a different kind of bricolage, and it's like those who made cathedrals, or I'm maybe exaggerating, but
yeah, well, I can say something. I think that's the Nestor Almendros, the director of photography. I don't know if it's him or Romer, but one of them said that when you choose well your color, half of the lighting work is done. So that's something I had in mind, and it can change everything. You change a jacket, and suddenly the image lost all its equilibrium. I had some painting that for reference, but I don't. Well, we start shooting more than 5 years ago, so those questions of the color, I know they were clear in my head at the beginning, but now I don't remember. Yeah, but no, yeah, that's what. And about the technology, one thing I will repeat what I said. I'm not against new technology. What I'm against is that we don't pass enough time with our camera to learn how to. That's the main thing. You can take, and now I have a new camera which have the 4K option. Well, I'm trying something with the 4K. I'm trying, and you can zoom in the image in 4K. There's a lot of things you can try also to degrade or to find something that is not just this main image that we see everywhere.
Is there questions from the audience, perhaps? No? Yes.
Hi. I want to ask something about a fragment that is exposed in your film from another filmmaker. Because when Raoul is having his speech, there's this scene from a Robert Kramer film that is shot like very near from here in Berlin. And yeah, I was just interested, is it just like you mentioned earlier that it's Raoul's thing, these influences, or is it also important to you? And how's your relation to this fragment especially?
I really like Robert Kramer. Yeah, and he was important for this movie. But how we came to use that footage for the Assemblée Révolutionnaire scene, we asked a few of our friends to prepare speeches about what they consider political today. Something a little. They were free to produce any speech they wanted, and the speech, the one we see before Raoul, Louis, who talks, who was in Berlin when the wall fell. No. And so I for the 3 or 4 speech that we had, I decided to choose this one, and then that was based. I didn't know he was going to talk about the Berlin Wall, and then I remembered that movie that I like from Robert Kramer, and I tried to integrate it in the collage way to try to make some dialogue with the speech and also, of course, the fall of the. How do we say that? The fall of the wall. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm not. I feel a little short to talk about that here, but
No, none of us is trying to.
Okay. It's sort of. I think it's a turning point. Yeah, of course, in what we call the end of politics, and that's one of the questions we were asking ourselves during this movie. How can we? Is politics a ghost, possible to make those ghosts reappear, make them real again. And Kramer in this film, he talks a lot about this. He feel really deep inside him that that's what is going on. He didn't have to wait 10 years to realize, oh, that's what was going on. It was sort of the end of politics. He felt it right in the time because he was there in a lot of political movements from the 60s to the end of his life. So yeah.
He also, I remember in the movie, he talks about many of his friends, activist friends, that gave away their books, and that it was over. They couldn't, they couldn't talk about changing things or thinking about the world, and so he felt. In this movie, I adore this movie, Berlin 1090, and at the end, I think he films his wife in a bathtub, and it finishes a bit like that, and he says that he filmed to fight against it, to fight against the breakdown of those kind of politics. But that's just a little insight.
Yeah. Very good question, because this is one of the most suffocating films I've ever seen. When I saw Robert Kramer's film, it's like you leave the screen like with a feeling of, I mean, nothing is possible again, because it's so suffocating. His body in front of the camera, and he captures that time so in a way that is so strong. And in your film, it's like it's really interesting, because there's this split between the two characters, right? You're the couple. Well, Constance goes to the fight, and Eugène can't write, and she stays home, and he's suspicious about the revolution. But at the same point, the film has a certain kind of somehow a lyrical quality, or a hopeful quality. Perhaps, for instance, when they discover the money, when they receive the money, and there is this joy, at least somehow joy with money, which is a very strange thing for a revolutionary film, or for a film dealing with the revolution. But the film has this quality of being both melancholic in some points, but also it has a lot of joy at some points as well. So, I mean, I don't know if you could comment on that as well, and if this, I mean, what was the tone that you guys were looking at, or if there isn't some kind of mood that you wanted with the film?
Yeah, we wanted it to be playful, because we knew we were not actors, so we had to have these playful things that reveals the fact that we're playing, like, in both sense of the terms. And that was we were talking about Kramer. I could say somehow maybe at the origin there was this mix in my head of Jacques Rivette, maybe Out One and things like that, because we shot a lot, and the script we rewrite it a lot, and it could take all sort of tangents. So in Rivette, well, I'm not comparing it anyway, but in any sort. But we had this in Rivette. There's this narrative aspect that is always a little bit playful, and we wanted it to be there, and to contrast with more the melancholy, and I don't know if we wanted that. We tried to find an equilibrium between all sorts of emotions. That's something to add. No, yeah, but yeah, one of the other things, Kramer, you said it well. It was embodied. It was really embodied, and in our movie, there's this question where to well, it's not embodied enough. I know that it was hard because our body were exhausted just by preparing the setup, and that add this ghostly thing that is consciously a question we try to examine, and the ghostly trace of an embodied presence of politics. That is I don't know what
You want to add something on that, Tina, perhaps?
Not really.
Yeah.
Okay.
We-
Yeah, about the mood. I think okay. About the general mood of the movie. Of course, we were at this time in a very, and now too, of course, but in a very tragic state of mind in general. But the encounter for meeting us, the start, my English, the naissance, the starting of our friendship was such a joy in itself. Because when we are few tragic minds full of angst and of desire who encounter each other, well, we can do what we could call tragic laughter. And we couldn't stop laughing about all the tragedies of the world. And each time we saw each other for all nights, we were just laughing about how the world was horrible. And it was, we could make this magic happen, that the tragic of the world could become a creative laughter. And all of the movie, because we are full of this joy just when we are with each other, all the movie is full of this sparkling friendship that is in itself a kind of solution, maybe, that is there in the background of the movie, which is the only thing that can happen well in this world, is that we can meet with other and speak with the true heart, and then well, something will happen that is very nice. And that, like Guattari says, it's a molecular revolution that awaits us, and not anymore a great linear revolution. It's only with this friendship dust that maybe something out of it will appear. So yeah.
She speaks so well that my thing now would be to end the conversation, because it would be a beautiful ending. But I don't know if we have more questions, perhaps, from the audience, or do we stay here? Well, Anna, yes, thank you.
Just some little thing that she made me think about was that also, again, the friendship is, when you make films, it should be more important, those links, than with the people we work with, than being in front of a screen and trying to fix problems, do troubleshooting on the screen. There's something political in that, in the time we spend and we take to create something together, versus being, all the time that we pass on the front of the screen is there's something to choose in beforehand, and I think there's a kind of link between this joy and the craftsmanship and the friendship. That's
Yeah, you were talking about body before, and what she said and what you said now reminded me of a recent book by a collective actually in Brazil called the Invisible Collective, and the book starts with something that says, well, if the world is going so bad, you know, if there's tragedy all over the place, if Brazil, for instance, is in an amount of ruins and catastrophes all the time, why nothing happens? Why there is no revolution? And they say because the revolution is made with bodies, and the bodies are in front of screens. And I think it's big, but somehow it's interesting because we're here, we're in front of a screen as well, but our bodies are together, and I think that makes a difference. If we are alone in front of a screen, or if we are together in front of a screen, it's very different. And yeah, perhaps I could say that.
Good closing.
Thanks, everyone.